I'm Allison. Thanks for joining me from 113 with Wendy. What have you been reading? I read Walk the Blue Fields by Claire Keegan. I read her books Foster and All This I Know. What's the one with the longer title? All I Know Is All the Small Things. It's like the houses with the snow. Anyway, she writes these slim books that really hit me in the heart. And she's Irish. The books are set in Ireland, and I have some Irish ancestry, and they just feel like memories of a time that I have not lived, which I find very powerful whenever I read them, because it's kind of, I don't know, it's one of the only authors that I have this experience with. So I enjoy reading her books, and there is a temptation to read them all at once, but I'm trying to just kind of spread them out because I find that Fields, Claire Keegan. Claire Keegan. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, boo, moving around. I'm good. I was just talking about a book I read. What are you reading these days?
I just finished Brandon Taylor's Real Life, and I started on the Murderbot YA books by Martha Wells. So I'm really excited about seeing what everybody's all excited about.
It is fun to read books that you've heard good things about, and then hopefully they live up to the hype.
Well, the weird thing is I was listening to Real Life with audiobook, and then I switched to audiobook on the Martha Wells piece, and it happened to be the same narrator, and I was really freaked out. I was on a freeway, and I'm like, wait a second. Is this Wallace from Real Life?
That would freak me out, because I mean, people read more than one book, but it isn't often that they read so many that you would have that experience.
And very different authors,
right,
you know, Martha
right.
Wells, Brandon Taylor, very different vibe.
Oh, that's funny. So would you like to read your poem, or is there anything else you'd like to say, or what do you want to do?
Okay, I just want to thank you for including me in this series. This has just been such a magical series, and I'm just so honored to be part of it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And it was so much fun
for joining me. I'm so glad. So Wendy sent me an email along with her poem saying that she had done this with a group, right?
Yes, my Monday night writing group. We call it This Thing We Do on Zoom, and we've been doing it since the beginning of the pandemic, since March 2020. And you know, we did this as an exercise, and it was fantastic.
It's a really fun way to get to know people in a different way. And even people you know already.
Right. We've been writing together forever, and it was eerie how some of them started the same way too. It was like they picked some of the same objects. So maybe it's not eerie. Maybe it's not that unusual. All right.
I don't know. I mean, you're 113, and I don't think anyone has ever started exactly the same. Just as a point of data, as a data point, I think. Yeah. Although the way yours starts feels very familiar to me, and maybe an actual, you talk about a general item. I may have gotten some with specific items that you are going to name for your first line.
All right. Well, we shall see. Okay. I purposely only listened to you before I did mine, so that I wouldn't,
get in your head about it.
Yep.
Well, good idea. Yes, please.
I'm from television jingles, from ivory soap and 18-hour across your heart bras. I am from rental house after rental house, boxed up every July because that's when the lease was up. Empty yellow U-Haul truck smelling of old ketchup, animal urine, and WD-40. I am from lilacs every May, cones of lavender, bridal veil white, and jammy deep purple flowers as fragrant as a dream of a different lifetime. I am from making a wish when you see a loaded hay truck and stamping it so that you know it will become true. And from a family of women who loved men, either kicked out or left them, sometimes in loss, and other times just in the angry winter night. From Esther and from Alvinia, who both ran taverns with husbands who drank up all the profits. I'm from feeling as though no matter how hard you work, you just can't get ahead. The odds are always uneven. I'm from a mother will always love you, and lucky you were born before Roe v. Wade. I'm from Lutheran church potlucks held in the basement on dark winter afternoons and sitting under the table surrounded by sensible shoes, proper ladies' hosiery, and wet grime from slush on linoleum squares. I'm from Wisconsin and Prussia and Flanders and Holderness, from squeaky fresh cheese curds and sauerkraut and booyah, from great-great-grandpa Steffens running a still for the boys in Cicero during Prohibition and to sell at the White Eagle, to great-grandma Lorraine dying of a backroom abortion when she was 26 and already a mother to 2 under 5 during the Great Depression. When each of my grandmothers passed, they left me just photos, all the photos, black and white with faces that gleamed out like silent film stars with pouty lips and shiny satin-bowed hats. My trove is scanned and dated, along with a deep, rich archive of genealogical names that even my grandmothers had never heard of when they held my research in their hands, staring at their lineage like it was an impossibility. The bugler in the Revolutionary War, the woman hugging of the witch in Salem, so many one-way immigrations over the Atlantic, late-night Google searches for paintings of ancestors, poured over for visible genetic markers, a turned eyebrow, a familiar philtrum, find a grave inquiries, requests for photos upon photos upon photos of names on those far-flung stones, as though their lives could take flight out of the internet ether and situate those who have gone before me into where I am, the here and the now. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. That was wonderful. And so it really, so have you spent all your life in Wisconsin? Because it feels very like of a place to me.
Most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Nevada for 3 years, but the rest of the time, and I was in England for too short to mention, but other than that, mostly. I feel like Wisconsin has pretty much imprinted itself on me.
Yes, it really feels like my mother is and her people are from Wisconsin. And so it feels very familiar and like I could swap out some of these things for my things. The foods, for sure.
The cheese curd. Although you
Yeah.
haven't lived unless you've had a cheese curd that was milked 4 hours ago, and now it's like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And
I've never had a cheese curd
day
until
before.
much later in my life because I didn't grow up in Wisconsin. And I was, what is this? So
that's the appropriate response to that because it is weird.
And I was really, I don't know if you have a visceral reaction reading from before Roe v. Wade, but I just still do, and I think I will continue to have that reaction, because now we're living in those times again to some extent.
Right. It's something that was very poignant. I remember hearing it as a kid from, relatives in their cups, so to speak. And then when I was doing my genealogy research and I found that the woman who had been my paternal great-grandmother had died from a backroom abortion and in 1926. She gave my great-grandfather was left orphaned basically at 6 years old and raised by a single father who got married quickly to somebody else and was kind of chipped off the relatives, and it really and he went off to do the same thing and abandon another child, and all of these things reverberate, and I always thought it was quite telling. I think about and of course the ancestor who was hung as a witch. It's like both of these people died because of just inflections on their body, one way or another. So I was thinking about that a lot when I was writing this.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine coming across finding out that one of your relatives was hung for being a witch, because I think that's something that lives in all of us, regardless of our relationship to it. But to have an actual relationship to it, because I think hysteria and craziness, it's something I write about a lot that's weaponized against us as women, particularly. And it was weaponized against one of your ancestors. So it really lives in you.
It does. You know, and she was weirdly later exonerated within a few months of the trial. Like she'd come to somebody in a dream and they said, oh no, you know, we were wrong. She had proclaimed her innocence the whole time. So that's like also a weird feeling. Like, you know, she was just literally murdered even though everybody felt that she was very upstanding and she did everything right. And they still did.
Which is how it works.
Right.
I mean, even the people who were wrong were right.
Right.
I mean, there's no, the whole system is broken. So, but wow. So you've been deep into genealogy. You appear to be from this poem.
Yes. It started as something I started doing with both of my grandmothers while they were living. And I remember I had this little, like, they'd found it at like a rummage sale, which is a Wisconsin term for like a garage sale or a tag sale. And they had found this little genealogy form. And then I just started asking them, like, when was this person born? And they're like, I don't know, you know, because there's all these things to fill in. And then, you know, I was doing it did it more seriously at the Vital Records office here in where most of my family has lived for generations in Green Bay, and found all of these really, you know, because it's Vital Records, you literally have their death certificate. So you find out exactly how they died and what, you know, how long they had it and et cetera. And I found 2 other ancestors who like had committed suicide when they were like in their teens in a barn with a gun and stuff. Like it was it was kind of grim and kind of like, holy,
it sounds
cow.
Grim. Yes. Yeah.
Especially as a teenager to be finding that. And now it's something I still do, and it feels a little strange because my grandmothers are both gone. So it's like when I find these revelations, I can't tell anybody. Like nobody is like, oh my, you know, I have to like find new ways to work it into to share it, because otherwise it's just this little private, oh look, you know, I found a witch. Although I was telling somebody, if I would have known that as a proto-goth in the 80s,
right?
I would have dined out that so
real
hard.
Street cred.
It would have been so much of my personality.
No.
What a waste.
I feel like a lot of people were, you know, sort of trying to be adjacent to that, right? No matter if they had any relationship to it at all. So you actually do. And you could go to Salem and go on the tours and be like, I'd
be like, yeah, it's my 10th grade grandmother you're talking about. It's Mary. She was a character in either Supernatural or the one about the 3 sisters who are witches, Charmed. She was a character in one of those things.
Seriously?
So I haven't, seriously, yeah.
Wow, how surreal. I have not done much genealogy. I get completely overwhelmed. So I just want to say I admire your tenacity. I feel like a lot of my immigrant family also were like, we were never from anywhere. We never did anything. Please don't find out what it was, you know? And I just, that's enough to just put me off, you know? Like, okay, yeah, you obviously don't want anyone to know what you did or who you were. So, and then the rest are in Wisconsin, actually. So,
oh, wow.
I could, yes, that's my mother's side there, Wisconsin.
Which part of Wisconsin? We might be related.
Seriously, out Milwaukee, mostly Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah. I have some from Milwaukee.
Yeah,
as well.
We did our DNA, which I know is like problematic, and maybe we shouldn't have, but we were just being lazy and curious, so we did. And my mother was really shocked to find, according to her DNA, that she was 100% British, because she was raised German, and that was her identity. And in Milwaukee, as you know, that's, you know, especially German. When my mom grew up. Yeah. So it's like, wait, what? That can't be possible. And then I was talking to a British friend. She's like, oh, it just means like, you know, she was like, the Brits conquered Germany back in the day. And it's you know, it doesn't mean they didn't immigrate from Germany and have all that German cultural heritage, but their DNA is British. So that was a surprise to her and her whole conception of herself.
The narratives that we share are often tied to one family lineage, usually the surname. And that's actually such a small, you know, even when you go back like 3 generations, that's 16 different people and lineages, and you're only capturing one of those from the narrative.
Yes.
I'm still, I argue with my husband because I've gotten bored and I've done his ancestry and I've done like my aunt's dad's ancestry, because I'm just like,
wow,
you hit a brick wall and you're just like, oh, you need to keep going for that dopamine of the,
the discovery.
And he was telling somebody he was German, and I'm like, you are actually very English, sir.
So he has the same problem as my mom.
Yeah, and
he's like,
no, they were Irish, and I'm like, they were French.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and I think it's also not only, especially as people who've lived in America for a while, it becomes about the food and the songs and the traditions, and it's not tied to many times language or a place. It's more this just general, like, I eat brats. I mean, that's really my mom's, like, I mean, she didn't even celebrate like German. I can't think of, that's Dutch, I guess. The one I'm trying to think of, what's the one? I was not familiar with it until my kids went to a school that celebrated it. Like it's in like early December, and it's the guy who shows up and puts oranges in your shoes.
Saint Nick. Yeah. That's a specifically a Wisconsin thing. Yeah. Yes. It was really weird.
Yes.
Other people have never heard of it. December.
Yes. 6th, so then I heard of it, and then it was a Wisconsin thing. So it was such a funny, like, connecting back to something my mom experienced, but I experienced it in a totally different context. I love regional things within this great nation of ours, because there's a lot of them, and we kind of try to act as if we're all united.
Yeah.
Even though we so clearly are not. As we can see. So it's fun to celebrate how we're different in an exciting way, and not in like a political way, because that's too hard for me to hold sometimes. But I can hold, like, oh, you celebrated Saint Nick's, great, that's amazing. That's fun for me.
I'll be curious to see when you're number 490 of this series, what the younger writers are talking about when they're talking about what was heard in their houses, and where they're from.
It's definitely different. I've done it with some classrooms and with younger people, and it's different. And I've joked about it with some people, because in general they're more rosy, because they're still young and they haven't sort of step back, or maybe they don't feel like they have a safe, right, they're still in it,
right,
and they may not feel like they have a safe space to disclose. I've thought about what would my poem have been like when I was 14. It would have been very rosy, because that was the reality I was existing in order to survive,
right.
So I have tried to get some younger people on here, because I am curious about that evolution and that conversation about how we reflect back on things. So it will be interesting as time goes on. I like your optimism. 490. I'll still be doing this. It does keep me, like, having it as a commitment. Someone asked me how I feel about it, and I like the sort of routine of it, that I am going to do this thing and talk to somebody and be engaged with their story. It's good for me.
Well, it's good for all of us. Thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to say about your poem and the experience, or anything at all?
I think that if I were to have written it in a week, it would be very different.
Yeah.
I really wrote it, within 7 days, and tried not to edit it much. I wanted as much of a raw kind of vibrant live experience, since we're live on Instagram. And I was trying to match that. But I think if I would have written it, in a month from now, it probably would have been very different. When you originally suggested it, and I read through the format, I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to include this, and I'm going to include this, and all these cool kind of contextual details of my childhood. And I wanted to talk about, like, Fisher Price, Little People, because I like that very much about my identity as a writer came from Fisher Price. And when I was thinking about it, that's not what came out. So I think it's something very magical in how we draft work and where we are at the time and the place. And um, I hope that the writers listening are remembering, because it doesn't have to be, you know, what you intend. What comes out is sometimes what is meant to be.
That's so well put. I totally agree. And that's part of what I love about this prompt is that I've had the same experience, Wendy, where I have this intention. I'm going to talk
Mhm.
about this because I've done a few. And then I start writing, it's like immediately tossed out.
Right.
Nope, not talking about that. Because for me, it would be Barbies. I'm not fish, but Barbies were a huge part of my childhood. And I've never written about them. I just, I don't know. It's not the thing that I am called to write about when I sit down. It just isn't. Um,
Maybe it hasn't happened yet.
yeah, and I think to me it feels too easy, or somewhere to my
Mhm.
brain it feels too easy, like to reflect back at how plastic it all was, because I grew up in a very like presentationally lovely
Uh-huh.
home, and it feels like, oh, that's kind of an easy metaphor. My my brain, I don't know if that's what's going on, but and do you have any television jingles? Because I do love television jingles, and I still know them.
Oh,
They're like burned in our memory.
you know, the one that I always think of is, I think it was for Anjali. I can fry it up in the pan, and then you forget you're my man because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Anjali,
Yeah.
which was a terrible smelling, supposed to be a body split,
Oh,
I
well, they
think.
put like so much of it on in the ad. Like it
Right.
was just like,
Yeah,
you know,
it was
yeah.
like a delousing station.
Oh, that's so perfect. Oh, that ad was, and that's what we learned was being a woman, right?
Right.
I mean, it was just very aggressive.
It seems so exhausting too. Like, are you kidding? Now I put on an evening gown after making bacon and working 8 hours.
Uh-huh.
It seemed so exhausting. But yet, you know, the women in my life all worked and all cooked and all raised children on their own. So maybe that, and then that's maybe, I mean, I'm say this as somebody who's been in the same relationship for 30 years now.
Amazing.
Maybe why, I don't know. They always thought that it was easier being single. They always talked about that. And I was like, maybe that's it. I don't eat pork. So I get to avoid that. I work from home, so I don't have to come home, and I don't wear evening gowns anymore. So, no,
That's like a really creative reason
yeah,
for not eating pork. That's
yeah.
not the usual reason for not eating pork.
No. Well, I
I've
have
been
a reason, but it's gross. So,
okay. Okay. Well, I just think it's a really good reason for you were inoculated at a young age by Anjali commercials or Anjoli or whatever that was. It was such a weird like
it was supposed to be French.
mishmash.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like not
No.
actually. Like so many
Yeah.
Frenchish things we grew up with. Um, that's a good one. Thank you for sharing. I think most. I'm curious. I'll have to ask my husband if he remembers it because I think most women would of our age would know that one immediately.
And I mean, the 18-hour bra was
Oh
kind of
God,
getting there too.
that made me laugh
So
when you read that.
exhausting. It sounds so exhausting. I don't want to wear anything for 18 hours, much less a bra.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. And was there like a timepiece like that clicked for the 18 hours? Or was that a different ad? Because that was definitely very important in ads with weird children, showing us how long it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I think there was like some, maybe like almost like a twister thing that they moved with, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when there was some
Mm-hmm.
older lady,
Mm-hmm.
matronly menopausal lady who was explaining to the younger woman about how their breasts need to be lifted for 18 hours. And I think she moved. I don't know. This might be a dream at this point.
Well, I don't know. It's also clocks were very. I think clocks were a stand-in for science.
Yes.
When we were kids, so there was a lot of that, like
We're gonna
time
do
lapse.
now.
Yeah, here
With
Tristan is gonna work this long. You know, Tristan, you're gonna not be stuffed up for this many hours.
Oh yeah, the Dristan thing still is on the box. Actually, I think there's
Okay.
Or Sudafed maybe.
Yeah, and it's people like, oh, what are these younger kids? They aren't watching commercials, which is hilarious because now they are starting to watch commercials because the streaming model doesn't work. So they are starting to watch them. And they do watch them on YouTube, but it's like, they're like local commercials many times, which are also amazing and still in my mind. So
I think they all have the 99 Ride commercial stuck in their head because I used to teach ad writing, and they all mention that one. Yeah, it's weird about what commercials say about a society. I do like though that the commercials for laundry soap now show men doing laundry and non-traditional family units. I love that.
They are. I mean, there is some movement, but yeah, it feels glacial at times and backwards at other times. But I think there is some that we're even having these conversations, and that it's not, we're not in a consciousness raising group right now having it, so that's progress. So, well, thank you so much for joining me, Wendy. This was a pleasure. We'll have to get together and have another conversation on Femme. That was such a stimulate. I loved it. Yes.
Yes. Public service announcement. The best Pride and Prejudice is leaving Netflix, so get on it at the end of the month.
It keeps suggesting it to me, even though I watched it. I'm like, I know you're there. I'm trying to watch other things. So
I know, but it's going.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I really enjoy talking with people about things that we all love, and that was such a great conversation about Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice. So thank you, Wendy. Have a lovely day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye.